Hi everyone, welcome to this new reverse pitching session. So we have two speakers, actually three speakers today. We have a pitch by Thaheer Mullins and Nina Kassiem on the investment thesis and what they're looking for in entrepreneurs. But before that, we have an introduction by Crispin here on the SEADE program and on, I think, every activities of the program that you can benefit on. So actually, yeah, without further ado, if you want to go, Crispin, go ahead.
Thank you, Ton, and thanks for having me here. Hi, everyone. I'm Crispin Sanga, representing Steinbeis. We are coordinating the project SEADE. I'm myself originally coming from Tanzania, but I'm now based in Germany for a few years now. And I'm going to give you a quick introduction about what SEADE is all about, which is, let's say, why we're also having this program today. And so SEADE is a EU project, which is funded by the Commission, European Commission, and it stands for strengthening the Europe and Africa digital transformation through the increased research in innovation cooperation. So the project is a follow-up of the previous project, which was called the Enriching Africa project, which gave birth to the established to the Enriching Africa Center, which some of you might be aware of it. And then so the Enriching Africa project was sort of establishing the foundation to the collaboration between Africa and Europe, bringing together different stakeholders. But then in the slide, you see that we have different projects that already started before even the Enriching Africa Center. So a foundation to starting the collaboration between Africa and Europe in the innovation platform. But then what SEADE is coming to do is to integrate the aspect of support to the innovators and researchers, which was sort of missing in the Enriching Africa project. And the support that we are providing is through the route to market services, or let's say activities that are implemented by different partners. And in the project, we have eco partners from Europe and Africa. So we have at least 5 partners from Africa. This includes the Hyperspace, which is in Ghana, also Association of African Universities in Ghana. We have Bondinov in Ghana. We have Enriching Africa from South Africa, Metis and TIA, which is the Technology Institute in South Africa. But we also have 5 partners from Europe, including ourselves, Steinbeis, who are the coordinators. We also have BPI France, who are hosting us today for this wonderful session. We also have EBN and WhatsApp Bondinov as well. And so regarding the project in general, what we are trying to do, as I said before, is really working on 2 pillars of digital transformation and international collaboration. And on these 2 aspects, working with 4 pilot regions in Africa, this is in Ghana, South Africa, Senegal, and Kenya. We are deploying different activities which are informed by the so-called the human-centered methodology, which was first to identify what are the needs or what are the gaps in the research and innovation sector in the continent. The research was done, which was the human-centered methodology applied, and then identified what were the challenges, let's say, and then working with these partners, coming up with activities that and this project and these activities that we are doing today is one of those route to market services that was trying to answer to the needs that were coming out of the research that was done. And we have several activities. Just to mention a few, we have webinars programs, we have learning expeditions, which are also ongoing in all the 4 pilot regions, which brings together the African innovators and the European innovators. We have soft landing programs, which is also a very, let's say, good program hosted by the Enriching Africa Center. If you are interested to be paired by the by different partners from Europe or in Africa, you have different twinning programs that you can find a twin from Europe or from Africa that can be brought together. But we also have the route to market, route to industry, e-pitching sessions and reverse pitching. So we are having one today. But also we still have the learning expeditions that's happening in different parts of the continent. This includes 4 pilot regions in Kenya, Rwanda, in Kenya, in South Africa, in Senegal, but also we have the twinning programs that, as I said, this is running throughout by the Enriching Africa Center. If you're interested, you can register your interest, and we always see where there is an interest from the other side of the continent to be paired to make it work. And this is one of the, let's say, the most positive project that come from the project. We have a lot of success stories coming from the training programs, but we also have the Digital Innovation Youth Training Program that was done in Kenya. We have bootcamp training programs that are also upcoming in the coming weeks. I'll also share the links in the chat later on, so you can also join some of these bootcamp sessions. But we also have the industry matchmaking activities, thanks to the BPI France Euroquity platform, which is there. You can also, I think, because you're part of this, you can have access to that as well, and of course enjoy the benefits of having the matchmaking activities done by the Euroquity platform. And we always have the research innovation events. So, for example, this year we had the SEADE RNI Summit, which was done in Baracado in Spain. The idea is to bring different stakeholders together and celebrate the collaboration and digital transformation, as well as international collaboration. What we are doing now, the project is coming to almost to an end. So we're in September, and the project is coming to an end in December already this year. So what SEADE was trying to do is to develop all these services are also going to be, let's say, sitting in what we call the SEADE digital environment. So to integrate all the activities that the project has been doing into the already existing Enriching Africa platform. But as I said earlier, we also have the Euroquity platform, which has already established a SEADE digital environment, let's say a community under the SEADE label. So all of these are going to be ongoing or continuing right after the project comes to an end. And what we're going to have through the Enriching Africa platform, you would have several services and activities that were already established during the project running on after the project comes to an end. So I invite all of you to please follow the Enriching Africa project and the platform, but also if you are not part of the SEADE label in the Euroquity platform, to reach out to Antoine to express your interest to be part of this kind of community. But also if you're interested to attend or participate in some of the ongoing activities until the end of the project, please stay tuned into our social media pages. We have different pages on LinkedIn. You can follow our YouTube page. We try to make sure that we're updating regarding all the activities and opportunities that are coming. So I'm wishing you all the best today for the session, and thanks, Antoine, for having us. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Crispin. And now we'll move on to the presentations of the two investors present. A few, I'd say, rules, not exactly rules, but guidelines. There is a Q&A session that is open. So feel free to write your question directly there. And by the end of the presentation, the speakers will be able to see your question and answer them one by one. So don't wait for the end of the pitch. You can, as soon as you have a question in mind, write it in, not the chat, but the Q&A section, sorry, and you'll get the answer afterward. And maybe we can start with Lina, as you're ready already.
Okay, perfect. Can you see my screen correctly?
Yes, we can.
All right, awesome. All right, hello everyone. I am Lina Kassiem. I'm one of the investment managers at Launch Africa Ventures. This is a snapshot, a bit, a high-level view of our firm. So our GPs have previously managed 6 funds. We have 2 unicorns in our portfolio. We've backed about a little over 300 founders to date, and have screened well over 8,000 deals at this point. So just a quick background on our GPs, Zach and Janaid. Like I mentioned before, they've managed VC funds before. They have extensive experience as angel investors, as well as VCs, as well as sort of, bringing startups up to speed in terms of investment readiness. Our journey, the fund started during COVID in Q4 of 2020. The idea was really to make sure to move capital, because both of them, as they were in the experience, whether it was from the bank's perspective or from the VC, realized that we really had a need on the continent for funding in the early stage, pre-seed and seed essentially. So throughout the idea, we went through launching a first fund. In 2020, we deployed it. We are actually in sort of the harvesting exit phase for that fund, and we have now launched the second fund. Just as some quick highlights, we've been covered in Forbes. If you want to learn more, there's actually a Harvard Business School case written on Launch Africa. Now, for the current fund, which I'm actively working in, we invest, like I was saying, we stayed in the early stage. So far, about 25% of our of this fund is in pre-series A, Series A, and then we have the rest into our pre-seed, 50% into the seed, and 15% follow-on, which is a bit of the difference between the first fund, is that we're looking for our second fund to do follow-on. Geographically, we have covered all parts of the continent. If you put both funds together, we have about 160 startups across 22 countries on the continent. In terms of sectors, we are agnostic. So we've done fintech, e-commerce, health tech, mobility, logistics, climate, and so on. This is one of our success stories in terms of our fund 2, Credete, which has already 10 times the value in 1 year since we invested in them. So they operate as a comprehensive lending marketplace on the continent. The platform basically streamlines loan application, AI-based decision-making, disbursement, and repayment process. Their customers are essentially commercial banks, microfinance institutions, fintech lenders, credit card companies. I think you see the you see the image here. Some of our highlights from our fund, our first fund. We had 133 investment there across 15 sectors and covering 22 countries. We already have some highlighted winners from that first fund: Peach Payment, Omni Retail, Kuda, and then as well in Francophone Africa, Jamo, Gozem, and I don't want to read every single one of them, but basically the story here is we're pretty happy with how the first fund has been performing so far, and which is why we're continuing to look for opportunities. I'll go straight into sort of what would be more interesting for this crowd. So FYI, we have obviously a board members. We also have an investment committee and ventures partner. Basically, what this slide is telling you, these are sort of all the people who will have a look at our investment before it gets full approval. So our investment process, on a quarterly basis, we usually get about a little over 600 companies. We make about 150, 160 calls, which brings down the funnel to 40 to 50 that we do in in-depth reviews. So in-depth reviews really means that's when we start asking for the data room, sort of looking into more details, maybe speaking to some of your customers. And then from there, we select 10 to 12 that we take to the investment committee. So which is basically the people on this, most of the people on this slide, to ultimately make 5 to 6 investment. Now, once you are in our portfolio, we have a model of coverage. So basically, we have 5 pillars within our coverage. The network, which is making sure that we connect you with, whether it's through our LPs or through the team itself. We have a vast network of people that are well connected throughout the continent and beyond. So it's connecting you with the right people to help you grow, and to help you obviously for your next fundraising. Also in terms of partnerships, then in terms of talent and upskilling. Reporting, we try to have to be an easy partner. We do require to have some monthly reporting to us, as well as yearly reporting, because the idea is we don't want to wait until the entire building is on fire before we can help you manage whatever issues or challenge that you are facing. It's the reality of entrepreneurship. Unfortunately, often founders feel like they have to talk to investors. They have to hide the bad news with the investors. We actually have office hours dedicated for founders to come in and tell us whatever is happening, so that we can make sure that we are helping them, whether it's internally, externally, sometimes even with other investors or with clients. We are really here to try to be the partners that you can rely on. So beyond capital, which is very important to us, capital is just a mean at the end of the day. Based on our investment, we have about 60,000 jobs that were created. 100% of our companies aligned with at least one SDG. We have 30 female founders within our portfolio. Not good enough. We're always pushing for that, because that comes down to only 20% of companies that are female-led. We definitely want to bring that up, because we know that in our pipeline, we have enough to get to 40%. 90% of our companies have statutory governance policies, and 46% of companies have climate intervention. So our part of our mission, obviously, is seeding the next wave of African unicorn. We're already seeing a couple in our portfolios that would potentially match that in the next few years. So Kuda, Credete that I talked about earlier, Peach Payments, Gozem, and Omni Retail. So stay tuned and wish us and everyone else involved luck. It will be great for the ecosystem, honestly. Exits so far, we've done a couple. We've done some partial, we've done some full exits. We did one with MAD in Senegal and GEM HR in South Africa. Those are good news. I think sometimes the founders might be a little scared or reluctant, but our role and our goal as early investors is to exit. And that's a good signal for the ecosystem, because it means there is liquidity. If exits are not happening, it will make it harder over the years to continue to do investment. This is the community of partners that we have to be able to support the startups in our portfolio. So we have the usual AWS, Google Cloud, Salesforce, Microsoft, and Divya, but we also have some that may not be as known: Zina, Mixpanel, and so on. This is very quickly some testimonial from some of the founders in our portfolio. Just again, what struck us here for us is that we always want to make sure that founders see us as a partner, not just a check writer and then we don't exist. On the other end, we're not looking to, breathe into your neck and, influence every single decision that you have to make. So again, it's a partnership. It's a win-win, if the startups obviously grows and get to be successful. We also have obviously some testimonial from LPs in our fund. We function much as a retail fund. What that means is our LPs tend to be individuals who are actually quite involved and want to either invest themselves next to us in startups, or actually be part of the life of the startups and advise them as best as they can. So this is what we bring to the table from both LP's perspectives, the newsletters, the reports, and network access and immersion, as well as for our founders, strategic guidance, network access, operational support, value-added services, mentorship, and coaching. And on that, I am done.
Thanks a lot, Lena. I think everyone's sorry. I see that everyone is shy, but you have the question in the chat from basically what you're looking for in pre-seed.
So in pre-seed, that's where the innovation and the market in which you are in comes in, right? So for example, the deal we did in Algeria was pre-seed. Algeria is a big market. It's very, very, very cash heavy. They didn't even have any mobile money operations. So the fintech in which we have invested is looking to, as the Algerian government and regulators, are setting up rules to open the market. We invested in a team that we think is the right one to sort of lead the innovations around mobile payment and neo-banking there in Algeria. So it's really a matter of the intersection between innovation and the market. So for example, it will be much more challenging to yes it's a good one. So it would be challenging to do pre-seed fintech in South Africa or in Nigeria, and I think Thaheer will align with me there, because there's already so much there that it's hard to see where the innovation and the value added would be. So that's essentially what we're looking for in the pre-seed.
All right, thanks a lot, Lena. Maybe we move on to the second page, but people, if you have questions that you didn't think about yet, don't hesitate to write it in the chat or in the Q&A section. Just make sure to identify Lena so that she knows that you're talking to her and addressing her. But don't hesitate to write your questions even afterwards, because Lena is thankfully staying with us. Thanks a lot, Lena, again. It was a great presentation. And now Thaheer, if you want to follow up with that. We can't hear you.
Testing. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for that wonderful presentation, Lena. So it's quite interesting. You've got a high volume investment strategy with a large portfolio, and we actually the opposite of that. So it's actually a nice a contrast that you're going to see here today. We also we agnostic to a degree, but within a niche, which is science and engineering. So we do a lot of hardware and deep tech. And so I'll be talking a little bit about that today. So my name is Thaheer Mullins. I'm a partner at Savant Venture Fund, and we essentially a science and engineering VC, but we're a little bit more than that, and I'll get into that when we start speaking into sort of the origins of where we are and how we've come and where we're going. So we essentially we believe that the real world problems can't just be solved by software solutions. So you know that does help with efficiencies and decision making and digital processing. But at some point, if you're in manufacturing, if you are in e-mobility, if you are in some of the sort of more harder industries, you need an actual intervention to drive value. And that intervention is either in the processes or it's using an intervention to collect data that then is enabled by a software layer as well. So we essentially look at science and engineering companies that are interesting, that can compete globally, and that can operate in the African continent and leverage an African, highly skilled African technology base. And then we invest in those companies and help them scale domestically, but then also scale globally. So we've got one fund under our belt. We invested into 22 companies out of that, and then we ended up with about 17 of those actually surviving, and then 6 of those really leading the portfolio. We had a bit of a different strategy to most in that we did everything from pre-revenues, pre-seed to Series A. And we actually, most funds, VC funds, have a 10-year fund life. We actually ended up doing a 12-year fund life with the option to extend for another 2 years. So we effectively have 14 years. We're 6 years in, deployed the first fund, now on the second fund. So we actually quite comfortable in sitting back, not sitting back really, but allowing a little bit more time to sort of transpire before we start harvesting. So that is one of the key challenges around science and engineering. Once you get going on the market, it's great, and I'll get into that when we cover some of the portfolio companies. But sometimes getting into the market, because you either have a brand new technology that industry hasn't used before and it's high risk to implement, or you're actually literally building a new industry that doesn't really exist at scale on the continent. And so getting going in these industries can take long. And so because we knew we were going to do pre-revenue, we negotiated for a longer fund life. And so we managed to invest in quite a few companies that ended up scaling and doing really well. And then when it came to sort of finding that follow-on capital for these African technology companies, that was missing. And so that's where the concept behind Fund 2 came on. We've had to offshore quite a number of companies into Europe, as an example, to be able to get them access to some of those follow-on funding sources. But what we've also found is that Europe actually adopts our technologies at a faster rate than some of the other continents or regions on the planet. So it's actually a natural fit for a lot of our companies to end up either setting up a satellite office or offshoring into the Netherlands. Into Europe. So, I'll get into the different regions a little bit later where some of the portfolio is in. But basically, we invest in companies when they still have a local African base. We help them scale with our capital and our resources. And then we aim to exit when they are generating international revenues. And so, why are we so focused on this, and why now? Why is the timing right now? So our fund 2, right, is focused on science and engineering, but looking at food security, energy, e-mobility, and water. And we didn't just choose that because it was trending. We fundamentally believe that where there are infrastructure gaps, that's where the leapfrogging is more likely to take place. And if you just look at the adoption of cell phones and smartphones across Africa and how that has outstripped other parts of the world at a rapid pace, purely because we didn't have that fixed line infrastructure base that was reliable, that the users of the technology could rely on. And so we're saying, okay, what are the most pressing infrastructure issues, on the continent right now? And, if you look at food security, energy, e-mobility, and water, that's actually where it is. And we can't rely on traditional solutions. And so the necessity to innovate beyond that would then enable leapfrogging is going to be in those particular sectors. And we've now seen the deep tech ecosystem growing even more. There's quite a few new players up in North Africa. We've got some hubs in East and West Africa that are developing now, and that's sort of vying for the relevant share of deep tech interest. So whoever comes out on top in the next couple of years is probably going to dominate for the next decade or so, maybe in specific areas of interest. Or specific industries, but it's very interesting now that we're finally seeing the shift and the output is growing, but there's still not enough deep tech specific funding on the continent that also has experience. And so, that's sort of where we are trying to play. And we think that across the continent, we do have the right talent, we do have the right universities. We do actually have an active corporate base that is interested in being more efficient, and that is increasingly looking at globalizing their revenue streams and those sorts of things. So this is a good time, and it is a good problem worth solving. And if you do it right now, you're going to do really, really well. And so again, science and engineering is the core of what we do. We look for net positive impact. So, we do a lot of negative screening. So if we feel that there's a net negative to the environment, if you're doing harm, if you're hurting people, then that's not the kind of thing that we would want to invest in. We are looking at post-revenue with Fund 2. So we realized going from pre-revenue, pre-seed to pre-seed, post-revenue to Series A, those are all just very different types of companies, and you need very different types of vehicles to support each of those. And we will come back to doing specifically VC in those other stages with new vehicles for those. But for now, we're starting with the growth stage. So we're helping companies scale. So companies that have already established a degree of product market fit that now need to accelerate what they're doing. That's what our fund is for. And we're looking at definitely sustainable competitive advantages, and those don't always lie in the technology. So we do have deep technology businesses where that is the case, but we also have just plain old hardware technology businesses that are enablers and first movers that end up doing really well because they're solving a pressing need. So this year, I'll just rapidly go through this, right? So Savant has got an ecosystem. We're a bit more than just a funder. So we started as an incubator, and over the years we've evolved. So now we've got SEADE, an incubation arm that we call the Foundry, that does early stage tickets into companies to get them to market so they can get those data points that they need. We've got an investment acceleration program that runs annually. And if we enjoy what comes out of those cohorts, we then allocate to that. And then there's the SEADE fund, which is a vehicle that we're coming back to as well, specifically to take up where your build and your foundry sort of hands over. We've also got a permanent capital vehicle, which is maybe shouldn't tell you too much about about that, but it's been established now, and it's really for companies that are interesting, that are beyond seed stage, but they're not VC, but they are very interesting, strong companies. And then we've got the venture funds that take on from there as well. So our portfolio is science and engineering. So like I said, very niche in that sense, but also if you look at the portfolio, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh man. Agnostic, yeah, within that, sorry. So we look at wide, we're looking at aerospace, which is cube space, but Inciavo, which is semiconductors. We've got SNC, which is advanced materials. We've got Lockstat, which is data engineering and processing. And we've got AgriLogic and Adigen, which are agri-techs, sensor networks, which is energy and smart home management. And we've got security, in-store advertising, we've got hydrogen production, glaucoma treatment, dental healthcare, IoT connectivity, distributed AI, video laryngoscopy, all at different stages. But the beauty of us having all these different stages is that we now know looking at the top row of companies, where the next row of companies is going to be in the next year or so, and then where the next row of companies is going to be in the year after that. So that is the one thing that's really good. But because they're also like different stages, different industries, it was really hard to get them to work with each other, which would have been great. Yeah, this is the team. So on the top left, you'll see Nick and Kate, the first two. And then under that, you'll see myself and Francois, and then the rest of the team as well. But the top two, Nick and Kate, they are the founders of Savant. Savant started 21 years ago with Nick and Kate, scientist and engineer, both with MBAs, recognizing that this was a gap on the continent, and then basically formed Savant to be able to support that. So everything we've done along the way has been in support of science and engineering companies. And then basically, just to quickly just breeze through our investment strategy for the first fund on a high level is we want to do another 15 to 20 companies. We are not going to follow on investments into all of them, but we will look at the top performing companies and follow on into those significantly. We've seen what the right follow-on capital allocation can do, both in terms of signaling to other investors, but also just enabling the companies to grow. We aim to lead most rounds because we are specialists at what we do, but we also happily co-invest with anybody who wants to join. So first fund, 90% of the deals we did, we managed to get others to come along with us. We've got a lot of proprietary pipeline and support that we can offer our founders. And yeah, we were able to cook and eat what we cook. So that's us, but we've got local and international partners that we work with, and that is us in a nutshell. So happy to take any questions from you.
Thanks a lot, Thaheer. And I believe you have one already from Alec in the chat on your red flags.
How do I do this? Okay, Alec Yardley. Pauline and Thaheer, in your view, what is the biggest red flag you look out for in African early stage startups? The biggest red flag. So when we started early on, when we were still the incubator, etc., and the venture partner, venture build, and before we were actually investing, we sort of said, okay, you do the tech and we'll bring the business sense. And what we realized is that sure, we can bring a level of strategy advisement and strategy advice and business acumen to the table. But if you're not an expert in that particular industry, if you don't have that domain knowledge on a business level, it's really difficult to enable in that way, right? So we found that a lot of the early businesses, so when I worked in our foundry business, there's probably only one company that's still active today trading, because a lot of those businesses at that point were still tech team heavy and not necessarily commercial industry balanced within those teams. So now if we see a company and we just see a lot of technologists and no real commercial team in there or resources, we get a little bit that's a red flag for us, and we just put it that way. And then the minimum that we'd look for is at least 2 founders, one commercial and then one technical. Yeah. I don't know, Lena, that question was for both of us actually. So I don't know if you want to add and jump in.
No, honestly, you had a perfect answer. I think, especially on the continent, because so many youth has been pushed into entrepreneurship, sometimes you see not enough experience with only tech experience, but you don't see domain experience, right? Legacy, understanding of the problem that they're trying to solve. There's so much focus on the tech that in the end, it caused so much long-term problems because they're not able to onboard clients, right? Because they didn't actually solve the problem that the people in the industry were looking to pay to solve. Because there are problems that people want solved that are nice to solve, and then problems that they need to solve and they are willing to pay to have those problems solved. especially on our continent where whether SMEs or large corporation capital is very closely looked at. You want to make sure that the problem that you're trying to solve is the one that they're willing to pay for it, and that they actually see as worthy to pay for a solution. So yeah, Thaheer is right on the money. It's like we look at the team and we go, who is the person who actually knows about the industry and not just about the technology that could solve the problem.
So there's another question. What's your personal preferred project that Savant invested in? I mean, you're trying to cause fights here.
It's like asking your favorite child.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's something. I'll answer the question, but then Alina, I also want you to answer the question. I think it'll be good for both of us, so we're both not in hot water. There we go. Thanks, Walid. So there's a lot of them for different reasons, right? Some for founders, some for um, just what they're doing for industries, some for impact. It's really hard to say. But if I look at sort of on a performance basis, like which company, like I really think is doing well, it's actually our space tech company. So we invested in 3 space tech companies over the years. 2 of them failed, but the third one has been hitting it out of the park, exceeding their projections. They got no local customers, unfortunately, so they do uh, attitude determination control systems. So they help orient the satellites. Global customer base, Europe, Asia, US, like you name it. And they're the fastest growing in that category within space globally. So like it's really good to that's a nice one to talk about.
That's such a difficult. I shouldn't have said anything. Maybe the question would not have come to me, but yeah, it's a really, really difficult question. I think by bias, I may lean towards a couple of companies simply because I'm closer to them and I know probably their market a bit more, or I'm more excited about their market. But for our fund one, I would say Jamo is really interesting as far as I'm concerned, especially for the francophone market. Right, it has expanded into Senegal. It's going into Benin and Togo, and the product is really good. Going back to what Thaheer and I were talking about earlier, when it comes to red flag, Hassan and Regis is like the perfect co-founding team. You have a tech person and then you have someone on the fintech, on the financial services who really understood what the needs were. So it's really exciting to talk about when, especially for this side of the continent that there's not a lot of capital moving towards. For our second fund, I'll lean towards Volfi, where we are both co-investors, simply because it's Algeria. It's been such a closed space for a really long time, so it's going to be really. This is more by excitement. It's a really good team of founders as well. And you have this huge market that Algeria is, so it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes. So, but I can go on and on and on with multiple companies, but these are like sort of like top of mind.
I just want to jump on your thank you. I want to jump on your comment on Volfi. So I invested in that as an angel, so not wearing my Savant hat. So I've got an angel syndicate that I started as well. There you've got a team that has the right industry experience, and you've got the tech as well, right? So you've got BD and you've got tech, so it's well balanced. And then on top of that, if you look at one of our portfolio companies called Mia Healthcare, right, as an example, they're doing mobile dentistry combined with 3D printing aligner treatments, so 3D orthodontics. It's nothing new overseas, but it's a first mover advantage here, and they are now doing extremely well because they executed on their business model right before anyone else did, and so now when anybody else wants to enter into that space, they've got them to compete against, and they're playing defense now, and they're not trying to win market share. So somebody needs to go 3 steps ahead of them or above them in terms of the value proposition in order to beat them, right? And like Bullfire is one of those opportunities as well, and that's what you try to look for. It's like, okay, what like as a VC, when you invest, you're sort of like, okay, what are the trends, like what makes this so special? And like Algeria is one of those opportunities, where they literally are passing new laws to enable fintech because they've been closed off for so long, and so the people that act now are really going to be the market leaders of the future. So yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys. We're slowly running out of time, but Thaheer, you have a really nice question on the link with universities and TTOs. So if you want to answer that one before we move on to, I'd say, last pieces of advice.
Okay. Yeah, so universities are great in terms of innovation, in terms of finding new ways of thinking of things. Often the stumbling block there is that the technology transfer or enablement out of those innovations and those new ways of thinking or those pieces of research into like industry, that's sort of where things fall short. And it's a combination of things. Sometimes it's that they can't find the right team, or they're not structured up to facilitate that, or they are structured to maybe focus on licensing out the tech to big companies, or the manner in which that they assign IP to the companies that they spin out are not necessarily compatible with how we view execution on IP as a VC, right? So there are some universities that are doing it really well. Public institutions like Stellenbosch University. You see the likes of a UM6P, which is a private university in Morocco. But what they've got is actually a university that's funded by a corporate that also has a VC arm, that also has a CVC arm. So they've actually built everything around the idea that, we can actually take the innovation coming out of this campus and make money off of it. But those are some of the challenges that we have with the universities, but it actually is getting better. And the universities are partnering more and more with sort of technical partners that can help spin these things out, and not just sort of relying solely on the academic side of things.
Thanks a lot, Thaheer. Now let's move on to, I'd say, the last part of today. And Nina, I'll let you go first. If you've got any specific piece of advice for anyone listening today, or even if you have important news like a new cohort coming, anything, that's your moment. If you want to take 5 minutes.
Piece of advice. Wow. The founders are doing really a really hard job. So I always feel sort of weird being, saying piece of advice. I'll say this. A no from an investor obviously does not invalidate your business, right? It's a tricky place to be confident enough to know that what you are working on can and will work, but also humble enough to get feedback and understand that a no does not invalidate everything you've built. Resiliency is not a thing that African founders lack, but I'll just say right now it might be a bit challenging to fundraise. It's no longer like it was a couple of years ago. So be a bit patient and, try to see in terms of valuation, your numbers, the market. Like, I understand you so much sometimes so into your startup, you may not see what's happening outside, not because you don't want to, but because you focus. But there is I think there is a lot of opportunity in carving some room to understand what else is happening on a micro level, on a macro level in your ecosystem, as well as ecosystem adjacent to yours, because I think that will definitely guide you in making decisions, a bit more nuanced, especially given, the state of the world, the state of the economy right now.
Thanks a lot, Lina. Thaheer, do you want to go? You have specific advice.
I might sound like a bit of a traitor when I say this, but I don't think, like, if you're raising for the first time, I don't think you necessarily need to always go and look at a VC for that capital. So there's a lot of different sources out there, and I think at that really early stage, your angel investor networks are probably a really good source of capital, or those friendly business angels that you might know. Maybe it's not a network, but can really provide you with patient capital, advice, industry specific knowledge, or those angels that actually want to invest and become a co-founder as a result. Those are often the best value for money investors that you can find at a really early stage. It's not that VC isn't good. It's just that when you raise from a VC, right, we have raised money from others and put our own money into things, but mostly we've got it now duty to show increases in value and create returns for those investors that have put money into our funds. And so as a result, we need to see growth constantly. And so, we can't sometimes be as patient as we'd like to be. And so we end up putting a lot of pressure on portfolio companies. So it's sort of like, my advice is usually like, raise angel funding until you're ready for VC funding. Right. And then once you get in the VC funding, you're in it and you're ready and you're going, you've got your product that's gone to market, all you need to do is scale. And that's where your VC funding can really help you. And then also, what I also like to say is, even though you're going to an angel that you may or may not know, or that may or may not belong to a syndicate, just because they're an angel doesn't mean that you should not show up. Show the same amount of care and sort of respect as you would for an institutional VC that you would for those angels. And they will appreciate that, and they will show you the same, and oftentimes enable a lot more than they otherwise would have.
Well, thanks a lot, Thaheer, and thanks a lot to the both of you. I think it was a great session. It was very interactive. We had good discussion. So thanks to you both, and thanks for the people that asked questions. Anyway, you can find the replay of this session on the SEADE website, and you can also find the replay of the other sessions that we had previously within SEADE on the SEADE website, as well as anything that is upcoming. For most of you familiar with Yoquidi, you can find everything on the Yoquidi platform as well. So I think I end it here and wish you all a very nice day. Thanking you, Thaheer, Crispin, and Lina once again, and wishing everyone a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.